Whenever two or more politically active people engage in conversation, invariably someone asks, "Will Donald Trump run in 2024?" My standard answer is always "I have no idea," until last week when Trump's much ballyhooed vendetta campaigns to defeat Georgia Gov. Brian Kemp and Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger ended in embarrassing anti-Trump failures. Reportedly, Trump was stunned by the results and headlines such as the Washington Post's "Trump rebuked with stinging losses in Georgia GOP." But they're not surprising since the former president's primary challengers, former Sen. David Perdue, Republican Georgia, and Representative Jody Isay, Republican Georgia, were Trump stand-ins specifically chosen to promote the big lie. Trump's reputation in Georgia has Republicans speculating about his declining king-making powers, openly defying him as he loses his vice-like grip on the party and potentially endangering his frontrunner status. So, circling back to the most asked question, my new answer is Trump won't run in 2024. Based on personality traits rooted in the words fear and fight. We begin with fear, indirectly drilled into young Donald Trump's psyche by Fred, his authoritarian father, who demanded that his son always win and show strength but never weakness. Fred taught Donald that he could lie or twist the truth but never back down. Consequently, Trump developed an unnatural fear of losing or being called a loser. Those grueling family dynamics were chronicled in Mary Trump's book Too Much and Never Enough, subtitled How My Family Created the World's Most Dangerous. Donald Trump's niece is a PhD clinical psychologist whose bestseller was published in July 2020. Then, during a television appearance on December 3, 2020, Mary explained, "It's impossible for Trump to believe that he lost." That inability is why Trump can let go of 2020 and will tease a 2024 run for as long as possible. But, ultimately, Trump's fear of losing is likely stronger than his willingness to take the risk. Moreover, during a second, the former president would be hard-pressed to use the same predictive excuse first heralded in a May 25, 2020. Democrats see a constitutional crisis in the making. And again, on August 17, 2020, a Hill headline quoted the president's losing rationale. Then, amazingly, on Tuesday, Trump activated his go-to playbook, writing his followers, "I see me, something stinks in Georgia. Stay tuned for that explosion." Furthermore, Trump's fear of and losing a second time is not assuaged by presidential history. In 1892, Grover Cleveland was the first and only former president to win the office non-consecutively. But there is a striking political difference between Trump and Cleveland's win-loss record. By comparison, Trump has never won the popular, a fact that must haunt his ego and heighten his fear of 2024. And now, since I don't believe that Trump will again, it's a good time to solicit Roger Stone's opinion. Stone, a colorful political operative, is Trump's longtime consultant and confidant who received a presidential pardon in 2020. In a text message, he wrote: "If he chooses to, I don't think he could be stopped for the nomination, and I would be for him." This is a precisely accurate reflection of my conversation with him on this topic. But between the lines in Stone's message, I read, fear. Why else would Trump have excessively teased his and still not made a decision? Of course, the big tease has been an effective fundraising platform, banking more than $100 million for Trump's PACs while solidifying his dual status as king of the G. And is there any difference between the two? Yes, is the answer that brings us to fight, the second word explaining why Trump will not in 2024. Usually, the 45th president loves fighting, but fighting for his party's nomination is now beneath his stature and shows weakness. Thus, King Trump wants and believes he deserves the 2024 crown delivered to his Mar-a-Lago palace on a blue satin pillow. Meanwhile, a fighting bench is forming with numerous former and current office holders unlikely to bow to Trump's crowning demand. Most prominent is former Vice President Mike Pence, who is actively campaigning focusing on the future. Meanwhile, In Florida, Governor Ron DeSantis's recent fundraising email was ostensibly for his but packed with poll-tested, red meat phrases to gin up the national MAGA base without its baggage-laden I firmly believe that the Republican version of the future is Trumpism without Trump, anticipating the next generation of leadership, and DeSantis, age 43, fits the bill. To recap, Trump won't run because he fears losing and does not want to fight for the nomination. But here is why I could be wrong: I asked Mark McKinnon, the co-host of Showtime's The Circus and the last presidential strategist to win the re-election of a Republican president, George W. Bush in 2004. McKinnon replied, "Trump will never concede the stage or the spotlight to anyone else unless he's in prison or a hospital. He's not licking his wounds, he's licking his chops. Every defeat is someone else's fault. Every victory is his alone. The notion that he would simply exit stage left because of some political reality, self-reflection, or awareness flies in the face of everything we've learned about him." It is fitting to conclude with a favorite Trump quote, "We'll see what happens."